Hey guys, what's up? So, I thought I'd make this quick little video just to give myself something to do and get something else out in the channel for a bit of amusement. Um, I do have plans for other things. I've had various plans for quite a long time, but there were a couple of videos I had hoped to get out and up on the channel by now, and it hasn't happened. I don't have the time to do everything, so I'm hoping to be able to get them sorted soon. And in the meantime, I just thought I would throw this one out because it's nice to have a little bit of content every now and again. So I wanted to quickly go over a new video by this user, Indio007, who some of you will recognise from Hoxley's chat, and he's also a fan of Behind the Learning Curve, or as I suppose most of you would probably know them, Beyond the Imaginary Curve. And this all links together to the little bit of backstory I was going to give you to explain why I'm even looking at Indio's video in the first place. So, recently Indio put up a couple of videos, and all they were mirrors of a video that had been made by Gav from Behind the Learning Curve, otherwise known as Vortex Puppy, or as I prefer to call him, Vacuous Muppet. Now, Gav, as you may know, is the regular who spends his time spinning nonsense over on the BTIC channel, but a few people I think recently became aware of Gav who didn't know him before because of his stunning debut on the Non Sequitur show. Now, the thing about Gav is that he claims to be a credentialed individual with a degree in both maths and physics, and yet he basically just talks bollocks and says a lot of things that nobody who has even just like a basic grasp of physics and geometry would ever say. It leaves his claims rather open to question, because either he has some qualification and he's playing some kind of game, or he's got some kind of mental problem, or he's just lying. So this is how I've ended up interacting with Indio recently on his own channel, because he chose to mirror this video by Gav that he recently put out claiming that we have spherical vision and that objects disappear from the bottom up, etc, etc. And Indio posted this up in a couple of chunks, and I commented on one of those chunks. Now, first I want to highlight yet another scumbag flat earther who can't take criticism and likes to censor what people have to say because they don't have answers and arguments to provide back. So welcome to the club there, Indio. As you can see on the video, there are only 2 comments listed. There should be maybe somewhere in the region of 12 to 15. I can't remember the exact amount, but one of the main reasons a chunk of them have gone is because Indio's deleted the conversation that he and I were having, which was actually a part of a comment created by another user. Now, I do tend to screenshot a lot of my conversations, and I have most of it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to screenshot the final message before Indio deleted and I presume probably blocked me as well. But I'll show you what I have just to give you the background. So here we have the original comment by the other user called 12. Now, he very quickly breaks down why the video by Gav is nonsense. And then I've come in and spoken to the original poster to say how I feel about Gav and the way he's treated by flat earthers as some kind of authority. Now, Indio replied to that, stuck on only on the idea of whether Gav has credentials or not, and I responded intentionally with a bit of facetiousness, pointing out the hypocrisy of somebody thinking that when a person goes on screen and claims to have an ID, that's perfectly acceptable, but it couldn't possibly be fake, whereas every other thing that these guys don't agree with, including everything ever produced by NASA and every other scientist who says the Earth's a globe and whatever, must be fake. So that, because it's a particular irony way, taking this kind of evidence from Gav, basically seeing an image on a screen, because this is part of Gav's entire bullshit rhetoric, which he displayed very nicely on the Non Sequitur show when he demanded to be shown evidence of something, and then when someone showed him something, he claimed you couldn't show him images of something as evidence, which makes no goddamn sense. The man's a loon. So this is where this whole conversation is going with Indio. Anyway, you don't need to know the full thing, you just need to know that I responded to him this way. So then my last screenshot I have is of the notification that I received from Indio, and as I say, I never got the chance to actually screenshot the reply I gave to this. But what I think is worth noting is that Indio never did reply to the actual OP, the guy called 12, or the user called 12. He never did reply to the points made by him, which is one of the things I said in my reply to Indio. He refused to address that guy. He only came after me still about this thing with Gav having a degree. And then, after challenging me to address the substance of the video and accusing me of being a simpleton, when I answered him back, I gave him what he deserved, but in amongst that, I not only pointed out that he still hadn't responded to the OP, but also made a point of highlighting one of the deceptions made by Gav in his stupid video about spherical vision. And funnily enough, that was when I got deleted. So, call me a cynic, but it seems to me that the minute a piece of information was thrown back to Indio that showed that Gav was full of shit, that was when I got deleted. Although I'm sure he will claim that there's another reason why he did it. So anyway, this is kind of superfluous. I just wanted to give you guys the backstory, and part of the reason I'm giving you this is just to explain why I'm looking at Indio's video, but also after I'm done looking at Indio's video, I want to talk about this little deception by Gav as well. So, just once more, as you can see, the proof there, the comments are gone. Even though there was a full conversation between myself and Indio, and that was all done on someone else's comment. So it's all gone. So another fascist, another coward, whatever you want to say, just hypocrites who complain that truth fears no investigation and all this kind of stuff. When it comes to this, when you actually challenge them or throw their nonsense back at them, they just can't take the heat. We're going to look at Indio's new video, which is pretty short, and one of the reasons for doing this is I like to make people aware every now and again of the difference between what a flat earther thinks they're capable of and what they're actually capable of, especially when those people have gone out of their way to try and be so arrogant towards others when discussing the subject. And Indio is one of these kind of people. He likes to act like he knows a lot more than he really does. But let's see the quality of Indio's research. So here we have his new video claiming to be about Earth Moon Earth bounce. Now, you can go and look into that if you don't already know what it is. Not that I'm an expert on it, but basically it's an activity that ham radio operators can get involved in where they bounce a signal off the moon. So it's about radio transmission. And Indio has got this theory, which is that it wouldn't be possible because of the supposed motion of the Earth and Moon and the entire solar system, etc., etc. So he starts off by establishing how long it takes for moon bounce to happen. And note the important part here is that it actually states the speed of light here in meters per second in the clip, in the graphic that he has used. So then it goes on. I'll not play the whole video even though it's short. It's just an animation which appears to be taken from Business Insider, which is talking about the speed of all the relative speeds, so the rotation of the Earth, the orbit around the Sun, and the motion of the arms of the galaxy, etc., etc. And how much does that total up to in terms of an overall speed? And this is the value we get, 1,900,000 miles per hour. And then a secondary version of that in a slightly different unit, 530 miles per second. We already have the speed of light established at this in meters per second, so we've got two separate units of measure, or rather three. Now for the rest of the video, all Indy does is make the claim that it would be really hard to hit the moon, but when he does his own little graphic, look at the difference between what he shows and the actual motion of the Earth and Moon, and how it contradicts the supposed premise of his own video. So this is supposedly the core argument, that this ray of light supposedly wouldn't hit the moon because of the way the two of them are moving. But there's a couple of things wrong there. First of all, the Earth and Moon don't move parallel with each other the way he's drawn it. Obviously the Moon orbits around the Earth. The other problem is he seems to have drawn a graphic that actually represents something more along the lines of firing a laser at the Moon, not radio bounce, because obviously radio waves propagate outward from the source, and it wouldn't come out as one single line. So he's already contradicting the entire premise of his own video within a few seconds. Earth, Moon, Earth bounce, but he's not describing the path of a radio wave here. Notice that at no point is he speaking about the actual speed of light, because when he used his graphic at the beginning it was only to establish how long it's supposed to take. But the speed of light was in there, but for this graphic, he isn't talking about the speed of light. So then he goes on to show this little diagram from this article, which, by the way, if you go on to read it, talks about special rules for the speed of light, but none of that is actually relevant for the problem with Indy's video. So he tries to make the case that you can't have additive velocity with the speed of light, which is fine, we can just skip right past that. He then goes on to do a second graphic. So in his final set of graphics, Indio then does this, which again looks more like he's describing a laser shot as opposed to a radio wave. And he uses that value of 530 miles per second. So now we've narrowed down his chosen unit to miles per second. We'll remember that, and we'll deal with that in a moment. And then as he moves on to make his point, sure enough, he talks about a laser shot aimed at the moon. So we need the speed of light in miles per second to match up to his supposed calculations. So the speed of light, as you can see here, again, meters per second. This is the value that we've seen at the original graphic at the beginning of Indy's video. Now what does that translate to in miles per second? 186,000. So he's chosen miles per second, and the speed of light in miles per second is 186,000 miles per second. And he thinks that something moving at 530 miles per second can't be hit by light moving at 186,000 miles per second. I don't think there's a problem there. Well, I think there's a problem with Indio's calculations, but there's no problem with hitting the moon. So when I very first looked at the video, I concentrated on this value, the 1,900,000 miles per hour, because flat earthers like their really large sounding numbers, and it's great to have this big high sounding number flashed up on screen. But you notice that at the beginning he used this nice little graphic, and of course he's talking about the time, so a lot of people are going to concentrate on the time delay and maybe not pay attention to the speed of light, and it's given in a different unit, so it'll be a bit off-putting. But if you go back to this nice big high number, And then of course he never bothers to actually compare it to the speed of light for the remainder of his video. But if we do that, and we see whether this number actually seems very big or not, in actuality the speed of light is 671 million miles per hour, which works out at just around 353 times this speed for the speed of the entire solar system moving around the Milky Way. So by the end of his video, Indio has moved from radio wave propagation to laser targeting. He's also used that old flat earther trick of using big sounding numbers to make it seem like something's impossible, but then when you actually look at the numbers, it turns out it's really not so amazing after all. The speed of light is 353 times faster than the moving target, so the idea that that target couldn't be hit is just ridiculous. And I would say that as he never makes that comparison himself, that I would consider that lying by omission, to be honest. This is what I find with flat earthers in general. They do tend to be very dishonest and rely on propaganda to make their point. So Indio seems to be no exception to that rule. So as I was saying about Indio, the reason I spoke to him in the first place is because of this crap by Gav. So of course, all the Flerfers love this, but the idea that perspective can cause things to disappear bottom up is complete nonsense. But I wanted to briefly show you the bullshit that Gav came out with for his, the main part where he tries to explain how something would disappear from bottom up, from his rather lengthy and shitty video, which you are welcome to watch in its entirety if you want to fry your brain. But this is really the crux of it, because this is the part that Flerfers give a shit about when it boils right down to it, is this disappearing bottom up thing. So as you can see, Gav has drawn this diagram which pretty much represents how angular size reduction works. So basically, any object, as it moves further away from the eye, the angle from the top and bottom, if this is a cross section obviously, this is the angle it would subtend to the eye, and as it moves further away, that angle comes in narrower and narrower, and that's why things appear to look smaller, which is fine. But watch as Gav deceives people by talking about this area here. And this is what Indio fell for, and when I pointed it out to him, that's when I got deleted.
But just to go through the argumentation, so when you look at the horizontal spacing between two things, then if I go from H to A, then the horizontal spacing is moving from U to T. And when I go from here, from A to C, it's going from T to S. And when I go from C to F, it's then going from S to R. Those are the 4 points that I have there. And this angle here between S and R, if you can imagine that this angle here, the difference between these 2 points is going to be, when I go further away, so small as to be insensible. And that's when the limits of vision are reached. And when that happens, and it's probably due to the fact that we only have a certain amount of rods and cones on the back of our retina, that we can make that differentiation. But basically that angle is so small that we cannot longer differentiate between these 2 points, from our eye limitation. And that's when this whole horizontal space disappears from view. And anything sitting in that horizontal space also disappears from view.
And there we go. There is the deception. If you're not stupid, it won't deceive you. But as you can see, we are clearly talking about the horizontal. He says it himself, the horizontal spacing, blah, blah, blah. These points and the angles that he's pointing at here, the very narrow angle from the furthest point, it only represents the distance over the surface, over the horizontal surface, from one point in the surface to another. So in other words, if you were looking over a table and you lowered your eye level right down to near the table, this is where the table will appear to become very compressed in your eye, in your vision. But it has nothing to do with any object sitting on top of the surface, but just at the last second there, that's what Gav throws in as well. So just put this back a little bit, and you'll hear it again.
And anything sitting in that horizontal space also disappears from view, because you can't tell one point from another.
And there you go. Complete bullshit. Anything that was sitting in that horizontal, in that area, is not part of the horizontal space. It's occupying the vertical space. So if we take these lines as an example, it doesn't matter what length they are sitting perpendicular to the surface, and the angle that they would subtend to the eye would be just like these here. It would be from the top and from the bottom, not from the left and to the right. The left to right is the surface. So the effect of this getting further and further away from you is it becomes harder and harder to discern the detail on the surface. Just for example, if you look over the sea, it'll become harder and harder to see individual waves, but you'll still see the general body of water. But that's everything below you on the horizontal plane. Anything sitting above the surface, you will still be able to see until this angle, the top and bottom, becomes so small that it starts to get to the same angular limit that is shown between these two lines here. But that's the trickery that Gav has employed. Because you can see a line drawn here and a line drawn here, it creates this angle, and he makes it seem as though something could be sitting here and be within that angle. But it's the 2 points of where the angle's being created that matter. One on the surface and one on the surface further away. It's the angle between here and here, not here and here. He is a liar and a deceiver. And when I pointed out that Gav threw in a little bit of deception by comparing angular separation to angular size of an object sitting above the surface, that is when Indio deleted my comment. So, once again, what we see here is the usual flat earth dishonesty and their complete inability to deal with information that doesn't jive well with their confirmation bias. They are dishonest, disingenuous, disgusting people, in my opinion. Cheers.